now. We're going to be hearing a lot from the Labour Party conference over the next couple of days. And one thing that Keir Starmer did say this morning is that he would scrap the Rwanda migrant plan. Even if it works, he said, the Labour leader, he said he would scrap the deportation flight schemes because he believes it's the wrong policy and it's also hugely expensive. He also said instead he would target the smuggling gangs, and that's how he would end the Channel crossings. So joining me now is Stephen Woolfe. He's the director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Interesting. Hi, nice to see you. You're outside in a forest by the looks of things.
I am examining the countryside and seeing the real country. Perhaps Keir Starmer should be doing exactly that.
Oh, well,
then he'd understand feeling for the people.
There's still cars behind you. Yes, so Keir Starmer was questioned this morning on what he would do with the Rwanda migrant plan, the deportation scheme. Highly controversial. And he's made clear that he would scrap it come what may. Essentially, it's the wrong policy, far too expensive. This is not the way to deal with the migrant crisis.
Well, we've had the head of the Border Force state that it was very clearly a positive plan that would lead to dealing with one of the biggest and the most important factors that people smugglers rely upon, and that is the ability to stay in the United Kingdom. And what Keir Starmer's policy view by rejecting Rwanda, even if it works, and let's see what he means by it works. If it works, it means that the people smugglers' main policy is no longer available. If it doesn't work, he's going to try and smash them. And yet there are three key points I take from his speech. One, he doesn't say how much the cost of Rwanda actually is. Two, he doesn't set out how he's going to smash the people smuggling gangs. And three, he doesn't seem to address the real key factor for most people wanting to come here and staying here. That's actually being able to stay here. He doesn't address any of those three key points at all.
Yes, and as it stands, we already have many efforts in place to try and stop the smuggling gangs. That's something that we can all agree on is highly important. It's what else you do that is the key point when it comes to policy on this. I want to also get your thoughts on what we've heard this week about Rishi Sunak and Giorgia Meloni in Italy, this new alliance putting pressure on European countries, the European Union, to act.
Yes, I think it's a really important point here that Rishi Sunak is reaching out to those who share his view that there needs to be a different policy makeup in stopping the gangs and slowing down the large numbers of people coming into Europe. After all, if you look at the European Union, 1 million people have claimed asylum this year. It's estimated that 350,000 are going to come in via Italy. And the four top countries of where asylum applicants and illegal migrants go are Italy, Germany, France and the UK. So it's a natural alliance for Rishi Sunak to join in with Italy, who are in that top four. It's a natural alliance for Meloni, who says she wants to try and achieve a reduction in migration, but is being thwarted by the same types of arguments that Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson face, that you can't push them back at sea, that you can't close your borders. But there is growing support for both of their views in Poland, in Hungary, in Denmark, to an extent in Sweden, and even Spain recently. So this is a good point for him, but also very important for Meloni to say that she's trying to reach out to others to stop the boats coming into Italy.
Stephen, just lastly, do you get the impression that Europe and its leaders, whether it's European Union or nation states, do you get the feeling that they understand the scale of this problem?
No, actually, I don't get the feeling that all countries, all politicians and all civil servants understand it. I think there are those beginning to raise their heads and say that this is becoming significant. We saw it from Borrelli in the European Union Commissioner, that he said that we can't take these level of numbers anymore. We saw it from a former president, Tajani, of the European Parliament, who's an Italian too. He said that we need to slow down the numbers coming in. And of course, during the French general election, we had Michel Barnier even raise the issue of closing Schengen. So senior people in the European Union are beginning to recognize that the vast numbers coming in are no longer tolerable, both on economics, both on the numbers being able to be housed, the infrastructure, but also the costs. It's good and it's important, But until we see real action at an international level where everyone joins together, as was suggested by Suella Braverman, this will continue for quite some time to come.
Thank you very much indeed, Stephen Woolfe there, Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Thanks for talking to us this morning. So I still have my panel with me on the sofa, on their own sofa. Thank you very much indeed, Joe Phillips and David Curtin. Now, this is well, we covered 2 points there. First, Keir Starmer on the Rwanda plan, very much against it, Joe. But then also the European response and Rishi Sunak's attempts to try and form an alliance with those who agree with him on how to deal with the migration crisis.
Well, I think, as Steve just said, I mean, it is a huge issue for the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
And the only way it can be dealt with properly, humanely and sensibly, instead of people looking for short-term political slogans, is for people to work together. Now, one of the problems that we've got in this country, as we know, is this massive backlog of people who have been languishing at huge expense to the public purse, to the taxpayer, in hotels when they could either be returned if they are found to be illegal asylum seekers, or integrating into the community, working, paying taxes and actually living sensible, dignified, proper lives. But because we've got this backlog, and the problem is that we've got successive Home Secretaries, but Suella Braverman actually takes the biscuit in ramping up the rhetoric of hatred and vilification without us actually being able to talk properly.
I don't think it's fair to say that she's vilifying people.
A hurricane.
I don't think. Sorry, but I probably wouldn't have used the word hurricane.
No,
but there's huge numbers of people crossing into Europe.
There are huge
and she was using a word that emphasised how big the problem is and how high the numbers are. Joe, you often, Joe, with all due respect, when we have these conversations, you always focus on the language. And you're always highly perturbed by the language used by politicians who want to get a grip of this problem.
Yes.
Now, I agree with you. Yes. There's no point having this harsh rhetoric if you're not going to actually deal with the issue. But you can't blame it on backlogs. We've got reports coming from charities saying 50,000 refugees could be homeless this winter. Why is that, David? That's because there isn't the space.
Can I just respond?
Local authorities can't deal with the numbers.
There's no social housing.
Let me just respond to the point
about
about language. There is a responsibility of people in public life, whether they're television or radio presenters, news broadcasters, or particularly if they are senior politicians, to use language that is appropriate to enable a proper debate. Joe Cox, the MP, was murdered by somebody who shouted out England first.
But this hasn't got anything to do with Joe Cox. We're talking about immigration.
You're throwing things together in order to make your point.
Yes,
and I don't think it's fair, actually.
Well, I do.
Because I think ignoring the problem.
If you use the language of hatred and vilification, it gives a sort of a carte blanche to people who may not be as bright, may not be as educated, may not be as well informed, to go out and
the plebs, basically.
No, not the plebs. Not the plebs.
I mean,
do you know what, though, David? The problem is, Joe talks about language, which has every right to do so, makes some very strong points about having harsh rhetoric isn't very good if you want people to live in harmony and unity. Of course, that is true. But I'm sorry, I'm looking at what is happening on the ground, and we have a housing crisis, our infrastructure at breaking point. Even if we had the backlog gone tomorrow, where do we house these people? 50,000 refugees could be homeless, says a charity. Where are people going to live? And this is what people are seeing, and particularly people on low income.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. But we do have a crisis both in illegal migration and legal migration, which has gone through the roof as well. There are no social council homes anywhere in many, many places. There are a small number of places, but half the councils in the country, you try to go and get a home if you're homeless, they won't be able to house you because there simply are none left. That's why a lot of people coming across illegally are being housed in hotels or military barracks or converted large facilities. It's out of control. It's beyond a point where we can cope with it.
Well, it's interesting, Joe, because Yvette Cooper came out to say that net migration has been too high. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yes, it probably has, but infrastructure is not.
Definitely has.
Infrastructure is about failure of investment. We've got, railways that don't work. We're going to have a half-cock railway that goes from somewhere in West London to somewhere, maybe Birmingham, that is costing an absolute fortune, which could have been used for social housing. We've got sewage being pumped into our seas and rivers. We've got the NHS.
Who do you think pays for it all,
we
though?
do.
How much do you want to be taxed in order to pay for infrastructure to support hundreds of thousands of...
Look at the money that has been wasted, Emily. Look at the money that has not even been pursued for an inch to get back from the crooks and the con merchants who made so much out of COVID.
OK, yes, I take your point. I would like that money to be returned. But that's not going to scrape the sides, is it?
But it would help.
I do agree that this government has wasted a lot of money. It's been more irresponsible financially than Tony Blair's government, but that doesn't change the fact that since about 2000, the population of this country has increased by 10 million, or nearly 10 million, almost all due to migration. And now we've got net migration legally of 600,000. Add to that the nearly 50,000 coming illegally in boats. There just simply is not enough homes, transport to cope with this.
See, Joe, you talk about language causing division, and I completely take your point. But I think what causes more division is the government lying, saying they want to reduce immigration, knowing that it is a deep concern to most people in this country, and then not doing anything about it. So we've got the horrible scenario where we have harsh rhetoric coming from the Home Secretary and others within the government, and little to no actual demonstrable action that they care about, either care about legal migration and also illegal migration, although you could blame that on other factors, that they haven't been successful in what they want to do. But let me know what you think at home. Thank you very much, Joe and David.